Welcome, everyone. This is the Tech Edge Technology Chat. We'll be here for about an hour. I'm Brian Meter. I'm the anchor for the Technology Chat. If you'd like to ask questions, and we certainly encourage you to do that, please ask them within the chat, and we'll address them as they come in. With me today is Allan Reiter and Mike Pollock, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Mike, would you like to start?
All right. Well, thanks, Brian. I'm glad to be here this morning to have this chat with you and some of our Nex-Tech customers, and just give a little background about myself. From Kansas originally. I grew up in Northeast Kansas, a community called Holton, that's just about 30 miles north of Topeka. And I went to school at Washburn University, computer science degree. And after that, I worked in the insurance industry for a while, working with technology, either as a software developer. We implemented networks, implemented some computer systems all the way from a handheld device up through PCs, through mid-range computers like AS400s and mainframe computers. So got a lot of experience in computers of all sizes during that time period. Started working at Nex-Tech in 2001 as the IT manager. I became the COO in 2013 and have high-level oversight over the telecom operations, our NOC, the help desk, development, product administration, the technology services department, and some of the other operational aspects of the company. So that's my background, and that's who I am. And I'm going to turn it back over, I guess, to Allan to give his introduction.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here as well. My name is Allan Reiter. I consider myself born and raised in Western Kansas, although I took a 15-year stint and moved to Colorado back in must have been back in 88, 89. Worked out there for 15 years for several large corporations. Some of them were eventually acquired by some large companies like Level 3 and such. But then I came back to Western Kansas to raise my children. For the last 15 years, I've worked here at Nex-Tech in varying capacities. Currently, I'm the Network Operations Supervisor. As of the end of this month, I'll be transitioning over to being the Director of Technology, which will have oversight and control of the current group I work in, Network Operations, the NOC, and then the Technology Services Group. So overall, about 30 years of experience in this and technology field, and willing to discuss any chats, questions you guys may have. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you both. It's quite an honor to be with all the knowledge there. So thank you. We are encouraging questions from our customers, from the attendees. So do feel free to log in, ask any questions that you'd like. But maybe to start off with, I'm out in the field quite a bit, meeting with customers. And one of the common questions that comes up is, how did the COVID impact Nex-Tech from a company and technology aspect? Someone would like to take that question?
Sure. I'll start off with that first, Brian, and I'm going to talk about how it impacted us internally as a company and our ability to serve the customers, and then have Allan add to that what we saw from the external customer base and how it impacted them and how that impacted our network and some of the other services we provide. So the first thing I'll start off with is we were fortunate that we had the foresight through our safety director that we had an emergency plan in place, and it had been in place for over a decade. And one of the chapters of that plan was a pandemic threat. And I believe that might have been added back when we had the bird flu situation a few years ago. And so we had a place to start when this all hit. And of course, there's lots of little things that you have to think about, but at least it gave us a framework, to start from. And so when you look at a situation like COVID and how it impacted us internally, I guess the things I'm going to discuss are, you need to be able to get to your systems and your data. That's the first thing. You need to be able to communicate with traditional voice over the phone using your business lines. And the third new necessity is video conferencing. And so as we started working on this, we already had a lot of the pieces in place. We've been doing remote VPN connections into our network for more than 15 years. We built the private cloud more than a decade ago, and all of our systems are on there, and our employees are hitting that cloud right now to get to the systems that they need. We started using RD Gateway in 2017, and that was a system that allowed us to remote in through the terminal services technology provided by Microsoft. We converted to Office 365 in 2019, which gave us the Teams capability, so we could do video conferencing capabilities. We converted all the employees who didn't need to have call center functionality over to our cloud phone in 2019. And so that allowed our employees to use their cell phones using the Max Unified Connectivity capability, formerly called a session, so they could, from home, communicate through their phone line. And those pieces were already in place, and we were lucky to have those in place. 90% of our employees had laptops already, and most of our employees work remotely as it is. They travel a lot. We're a very mobile organization. We have over 25 offices where we have office space where people are working. And so our employees were used to being out and about, working remotely, working from home sometime. That was a big help for us to get started. And so we started working on this plan to allow the employees to work from home, some who had not in the past. And so we asked them to start taking your machines home at night, just in case things happen, change quickly. Test them, make sure that everything is going to work, that you can get to the systems and you can make the phone calls. And then we had a couple of departments, like our help desk and our NOC, where they were all concentrated into, for the most part, one room in one building. And so we did some what I would call geodiversification, where we moved our NOC into 2 separate locations, and we moved our help desk. We spread them out, 3 to 4 locations, and eventually the help desk ended up working from home. Most of them did, and so that's how we were able to diversify the employees. There were some employees that still needed to stay in the office, so we made sure that there was plenty of space. Because we are a critical sector organization, we have to provide the services, to our customers during the times of crisis, and the pandemic is one of them. And so that's pretty much what we did internally. And, I would say it worked out very smoothly. It was kind of rough the first couple of days as everybody just got used to the new environment they were in, working from home, and the way that they connected was a little bit different. But once they got settled in, it for the most part became a new norm. And at one point in time, we had almost 60% of our employees working from their house. And the rest of the employees were either working out in the field, the technicians that were working from the trucks, or the construction crews were still out in the field. And we had our crews separated as well during that time period. So those are some things we did internally. And, I'm very pleased the way that our workforce responded. We have great technicians here that allowed the technology to work during that time period. And so it worked out very well as a company, and we were able to, for the most part, not miss a beat during this time period. Alan, you want to talk about how that impacted the external customers and what we saw?
Absolutely. And maybe just from my group's perspective internally, that Monday morning, whenever that got called out on Saturday or Sunday, when Laura Kelly said, we've changed what the state of Kansas is doing, we were all, like Mike said, adequately prepared. And that next Monday morning, there was a third of the workforce in the office. The other third was in another building that we have, and the other third worked from home. And we never missed a beat. And we were able to keep going, because that's whenever our external customers started to call in and need our help. And one thing that we are always somewhat fortunate about, I guess, is the high water mark that we see for internet usage is usually around mid-February when it's the coldest in Kansas and everybody's at home watching, whatever it is, Tiger King or Ozark or whatever they did this winter. So we knew where we needed to be because that'll match up with what our high water mark will be leaving a normal year. February was normal, so leaving this year, we knew that we needed to have a little over 60 gig of internet capacity. We have several cache servers and other things that augment that as well. But going into this in March, we already had scheduled about 30 gig of additional internet capacity available to us. So that was, I guess, fortunate, lucky, or all of the above, but it worked out very well because we had an additional, 40% of capacity, and we don't let things get over about 70% utilization because you're asking for trouble at that point in time. We did see some new overall high peaks of downloaded traffic, which was 11.5 petabytes. That was from a download perspective, with the peak being 66 gig of traffic. So to kind of maybe put that into perspective, people have always used the Library of Congress. How long does it take to download the Library of Congress? The Library of Congress used to be gauged at being 10 terabytes. The new figure puts it a little bit over 15 terabytes because they continuously add content to the Library of Congress. So during the month, there would have been the equivalent of downloading the entire contents at 15 terabytes of the Library of Congress 733 times. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
And the increase that we saw was business hour increase. Our peak busy hour that we see at night between usually around 9 o'clock as the days get longer, it may move into the 9:30, quarter to 10. But we saw a 35% increase during the daytime hours, which was all of the work from home people that are now there. So from 8 until 5, we saw, an increase of about 35%, which was nowhere close to our peak busy hours still. So it just had a higher platform to build on into the peak busy hour, which is about 9 o'clock. Our help desk for the first month increased 25% on inbound calling, about 1,500 additional calls that month for the help desk. April was only 6% higher, so it started leveling off. In May, was probably pretty much back to normal. I think one of the things we did see coming out of the gates on that Monday morning were other people putting into place their remote work from home initiatives. So we got calls from, I'd say, several companies that wanted to increase their capacity to the internet. And we're able to do that on our fiber network with little to no issues in most instances. It's a matter of a click of a few buttons and turning some knobs to the right to give them the capacity. Our wireless infrastructure, on the other hand, started to see a little bit of an impact. There's also a Kansas initiative, and was that a federal initiative for the schools? Yeah. So we wound up being about 125 students that had inadequate internet to do their work or school from home. So we were able to apply for and granted access to some 5.8 gigahertz spectrum. And it wasn't that easy to integrate into our network. We had to upgrade our APs, do some upgrades to our SMs, because they typically don't have the means of transmitting or receiving in that frequency because it was not legal to do so in the United States. So that helped out greatly on our wireless network to give us additional capacity there. Technology service tickets, they decreased by about 8% in March. Wasn't many businesses up and operational to their capacity. Some of them were totally shut down and running skeleton crews. It continued into April, there was a 14% decrease. So the continuation continued on as far as the decline. Getting all the technicians set up, everybody wasn't prepared for having all the PPE gear, the face masks, the gloves, the respirators, the visors, all of that. That was a big thing that a lot of people worked on from the safety committee, our warehouse committee, to get the necessary supplies for that. Then we closed our stores March 23rd to walk-in traffic and started reopening them May 18th. But That's how it affected our external customers. Outside of, we probably moved 300 people in that first week from being a premise-based phone to a session client that Mike mentioned, or could be one of our other cloud phones that we have, to allow them to start working from home, because some of them, I'm not saying they weren't quite prepared, but wasn't sure it was going to go to this degree this quick.
Very good. Thank you both. Maybe a follow-up question. This comes from Jeremy. What would be the most interesting trend for the rest of 2020 following the COVID?
What would be the most interesting?
Yeah. One of the things that I think has occurred because of COVID was the adoption of video conferencing. We, as a company, we had experimented with it and used it for some room-based video conferencing prior to COVID, but we really didn't adopt it, I would say, until we implemented Teams last year, and we had started doing some departmental meetings in Teams. But when I look at the way that video technology and video conferencing was used during COVID, I really see that as kind of the new norm, the new trend. And those that have it and are using it, it's just part of doing business now, and part of communicating with each other, with your customers, and with each other, your employees, and your family as well. And so that's one of the, I guess, the lasting things that I will see through 2020 and beyond is the adoption of video conferencing.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I'm not prior to, and I can't say that I'm a great fan of video conferencing, just personal preference, but being forced to do it and having to adopt it to do business is definitely one of the things I'll take away, because I guess it took everybody out of their normal lifestyle, right? This thing turned everything upside down. So it's became a new thing, and never did I think I would have, Zoom meetings with my in-laws or my, immediate family to have coffee on a Sunday morning. Normally we would go have coffee on a Sunday morning, but it became the norm to have a Zoom meeting on Sunday morning across multiple time zones to have coffee and visit, which was kind of cool. It's something I think we'll maybe continue on doing.
All right. Thank you. And I think you addressed this already, but maybe just expand on it just a little bit in generality. Was there an uptick with Nex-Tech customers going virtual and asking for help getting virtual during the pandemic? You addressed that earlier, but just maybe reconfirm that there was.
You know what? That's a good point too, Brian, because that's also the other thing I think we're going to take away from 2020 is the new remote worker from home. People that are working from home, Nex-Tech, we were forced because of the pandemic to act, which we were well prepared and went well. But I think that's something that I know that is something that Nex-Tech is going to currently evaluating, and will be evaluating long term to see what fits into our business model for our employees to work from home.
When Allan talked about that 25% increase in help desk calls, specifically in March, it was a wave of people calling in, and we had businesses calling in that needed to have their phone systems rerouted so they could have their employees take the calls at home. We had some medical facilities that needed to do telemedicine type activities. And so we helped them get set up with whatever they needed. And we did put a priority on critical sector businesses like the medical facilities so they could serve their customers during that time period. And on the residential side, it was a huge wave of calls because all these employees were starting to work from home, and they realized they needed more internet connection because they had their families in the house with them, and the kids were trying to go to school during the virtual school at the same time they were trying to work, or when school wasn't in session, the kids were video gaming at the time that the parent was trying to work. And so it did create a lot of extra calls related to increasing internet speed and getting the folks the speed that they needed. So those are some of the more specific things that we saw on COVID.
And that's one thing, even video gaming, Netflix with the kids at home, when the parents were working, the kids were taking 6 meg of their internet capacity watching Netflix when they normally would have been at school.
Mm-hmm.
Founded that.
What's the top website that consuming Nex-Tech's internet bandwidth?
So I would say in general, it's video services. Being more specific, I would say it's Netflix video services. Underlying from that, I mean, Microsoft and all of the cloud computing that's going on is crawling up there quite quickly. Google overall is quite an animal to try and control as well, because we have some things that serve locally. YouTube TV and those types of things have really taken off. So Google's right up in there. But video content, Amazon, the Disney, we saw it when Disney came out, which I'm not a big Disney fan. I didn't sign up for it. I don't remember exactly when that was, but when we were tracking it, we saw when Disney came online, we saw that capacity be an increase. So video services, Netflix, Google, YouTube TV, and YouTube in general, and then Amazon and probably Disney.
What the interesting thing about Netflix, Allan, was, 2 years ago, Netflix was, the number one user, and we'd seen it decline. And actually, it wasn't number one prior to COVID hitting. But the combination of COVID and some of the shows like Tiger King and Ozark really caused a big influx of Netflix traffic during that time period, and it put it back in its number one seat.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have multiple connections at your data center for this internet? You talk about 80 megs. So is that a single pipeline or is that multiple services? Could you explain to us a little bit about that?
So it's not proportional of being 10, 10, 10, and 10, because that wouldn't equal 70. But we have an east route that winds up into the Colorado area. Or I'm sorry. Wow, that was a west route that ends up in Colorado. We have the east route that winds up in Kansas City. We have another one that is a southeast that also winds up to a different provider in Kansas City. And then we have our northern route that ends up in the fringes of Nebraska. So we have a provider that's a 10 gig provider. We have another provider that's a 10 gig capacity. A third provider, these are all 4 different providers. A third provider that's 20 gig of capacity, and then a fourth provider that has 30 gig of capacity. That's 70. 10, 10, 20, and 30. And then we also have, for some of the other cacheable services, we can provide about another 30 gig of capacity local for things that are, you don't need to download Tiger King 500 times for 500 people to watch it. You can download it a couple times and let 500 people watch it.
Okay, very good. Let me check here. There's a question about TV Now. Has that impacted Nex-Tech in a positive way? Tell us a little bit about TV Now on the network and where you kind of see it going.
You want to start with that one, Allan, and I'll chime in along the way?
I mean, it's funny that you say, because I mentioned earlier, video services or video content are the number one things on our network. You can put TV Now right into that same area. It has increased the network capacity needs, but it all stays, for the most part, stays local. We get TV Now delivered to us into our cacheable servers, so we don't have to pull down 40 different copies or 500 different copies of CNN or MSNBC or KSN or whatever it may be, and then be able to provide that out as a, comes in as a unicast and gets regenerated out as a unicast for somebody that might be interested in that. But it is in the top, I'll say 5 at this point in time of traffic on our network. I think from a positive perspective, it's given us a modern video offering that's more in tune with the Hulus, the YouTube TV, those types of things instead of, traditional. So the younger generations, I think, could appreciate it more than the older generation, like maybe myself.
We did have some growing pains last fall, and they were related to, just the growth of the service with the content provider that we were using. And I feel that a lot of progress is made in that. It's been pretty stable here the last couple of months, especially during the COVID, when people were at home watching more video content. And so I do think that it's going to be a good platform long term, and I like the flexibility of it. And if you haven't tried it, it definitely is something you ought to try. Like Allan said, it gives you kind of that over the top experience that you see with Netflix and Hulu, but you're looking at live TV, but you can also look at some pre-recorded shows too.
It puts a whole new intensity level in watching the Super Bowl, especially when it comes to our TV now, because everybody was manning the battle stations in case something, were to happen. It all went well, not a problem, but, that's something that brought it on to a whole nother level of let's make sure this is right. And like Mike said, I mean, the growth of that, I'm not sure that we knew exactly how quick it was going to grow. So we had to continuously be adding several 1 gigs to receive the data. And we eventually upgraded to 10 gig. The other pipes of the data centers actually increased to 10 gig as well that are outside. It's how the content gets delivered to the regional cache servers that we then pull our content from. So there was a quicker upgrade path. We knew where we were headed from 1 gig to 10 gig. I think we got there quicker than we thought we were going to.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Super Bowl. Having the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl the year we implemented Moby, that's the ultimate test. Like we were kind of nervous that night, and it did perform well during the Super Bowl, and there were a lot of people watching.
All right. Moving to talk about some, this might be more directed towards Allan. Talk about the number of cloud phone devices, the SIP sessions. Do you, by chance, have some numbers there? How many we currently are servicing, and what the growth percentage might be?
I can answer some of those, maybe not all of the percentages in growth, but we've had cloud phone services from before I came to work here, probably 15 years ago, and it never really caught on. It might have been here before its time, but about 3 years ago, we implemented a new cloud service we have a Metaswitch. We implemented their cloud phone offering, and initially we picked up, a couple thousand SIP registered phones, SIP trunks. And I'd say it probably took about another year to get to kind of give you that percentage build on that, Brian. Another year or year and a half to get to even 3,500, 4,000. We're currently sitting at 6,000. So within 3 years, we pretty much went from, the old system had 100 or 2 on it to going from 100 or 2 to 6,000 in about 3 years. So very, very steep incline on that. Yeah. But it paid huge dividends. Mike touched on some of that, being able to reroute people's phone calls, being able to place a phone at their desk, being able to turn their computer into their phone, with some of these SIP terminated devices. We didn't, and I'd say, again, we talked about the data perspective of people needing more bandwidth. Within the first day or two, that Monday and Tuesday, it was apparent that we were going to be doing some unique things with our cloud phone system. The first couple of days, we converted about 300 people from being a traditional phone line in their office. We may have taken a phone line off of one of their SIP trunks or TDM trunks, redirected it over to their new, Polycom or session client sitting at their home so that they could then work from home. So there's about 300 of those that we did that day. But
yeah,
I think we did well by our customer base to execute on that.
Yeah, and I think it's going to continue to grow, Brian. I think that the COVID, actually during that time period, there were a few customers that said, okay, I'm ready to look at this cloud phone technology for my business. And as the years go by, it is getting more difficult on the premise phones, traditional premise-based phone systems to have options. There's been a lot of consolidation in that industry, and the market's getting smaller and smaller in the traditional premise-based systems. So I see a lot of those customers continuing to transition over to cloud.
And I think some of them that transitioned during the pandemic aren't going to transition back. think they're going to stay at home, or that's their new normal, or their new remote work from home.
Definitely was nice with we have 300 and some employees. So when we were dispatched to work remotely, having the cloud phone was really nice and worked well. Even got it on my smartphone.
Yeah, and that's what assisted greatly on being able to tell guys to stay home, right?
Yeah.
You can go and still participate with the main call-in numbers and all of that stuff. So it made it a lot easier already being cloud phone based ourselves.
Hey, I want to get this question from Adam. He says the industry is moving towards secure DNS. What is Nex-Tech's plans for secure DNS?
So we've looked into that, and we've looked into it almost, I'd say, annually. There's an annual debate that we go through this. It's where things are moving. It's kind of like, I guess I'd put it in the same realm of something like IPv6, right? It's out there. It's one of those things that you keep your eyes on, and you wait for the big market mover or the big push to happen, where it kind of starts the transition to the new norm. We've kind of seen this in the industry with email and being able to quantify or qualify your email, much like what the DNS could do, to be able to validate who you are and what you can do. We see it from our routing, BGP routing, wanting to authenticate. But until it gets to be the normal way of doing business, or there's that big market push or move, we don't really know where we're going to go with that at this point in time, I guess is a fair answer. Other than monitor it.
I will say that we offer some protected DNS services for our business customers.
Yeah.
And our basic cybersecurity offering is called Protect, Nex-Tech Protect. And that includes a firewall and some RMM, optional RMM type services for the PCs. But as part of that service, we will provide a gateway level of DNS protection. And so when you're a user on that network and you type in a website name, it will go out and make sure that that is a safe website, and that DNS table is monitored continuously. And when there's a hostile site that is identified, they shut that down, and you'll get a message back from the gateway saying this is not a safe site to go to. And then if you go to some of more advanced layers that we offer, like the profile, we can even extend that DNS protection down to the endpoint, to the PC. And so we are offering that as a business service today.
Right, from the end user perspective, from the services perspective, or the ISP perspective is what I was speaking from.
Okay, thank you. Robert is asking probably my favorite question of the day. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and I'll just read it from his words. There is a lot of buzz from networking vendors regarding software-defined networking. Can you speak in regard to this trend?
Good question. Thank you for that. I'll start with it, and we'll see if what Mike has to provide. So,
Allan's the expert in this topic. So,
it's one of those things. There is a lot of buzz now, and there's been buzz about it previously too, from a carrier perspective, because SD-WAN is exactly what it sounds like. It's a software-defined wide area networking. In its previous lives, it was to help carriers or providers to be able to control and manage disparate systems, so that they could turn up, maybe it could be a system from 2 vendors to 20 vendors. It could go out and touch and configure and build. That was the first, definition of SD-WAN. And the name got reused for one other time, but we'll skip that one. The current one, which I think the question is relevant to, was about a business or a corporation implementing SD-WAN. We're currently evaluating an offering that we could provide to, various different businesses. And it's going to be based around, I think the gentleman probably knows a little bit about it, listening to all the buzz, based around a firewall, a router. There's some black boxes if you watch some YouTube videos out there about how sleek and cool it is. But multiple firewalls, multiple black boxes, multiple routers if you wanted hardware redundancy. And then the key is to have multiple connections to 2 different internet providers, more than likely. I mean, it's not, you can't be that definitive with an answer. It's kind of a case by case, but I think in most cases it'd be 2 different ISPs. And then within the SD-WAN function, as it is defined for a corporation or business, the magic box will then probe and watch and learn what ISP has the best conductivity to. Maybe it be Amazon's cloud or Microsoft's cloud, or might be Netflix or Google or all of these other things. And it will measure it, and it will primarily use that link to deliver those services. And it's an ongoing thing that it can do the measurements of, and it could move dynamically, or you can manually configure it, right? Plus, it has a side effect of now you have 2 routers, you have 2 internet providers, you can fail over and have minimal to no disruption in your flow of data. So where are we going with the buzz? We're following the buzz. One of our primary firewall vendors has addressed this, and we're looking to see how we can make it a service offering. And hopefully some of the customers will be in tune with wanting to get a redundant SD-WAN network.
Yep. You described it well.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Maybe talk about cloud computing. You know, we talk about cloud phones. We talk about cloud computing. What can help businesses out there in regard to cloud computing, and what's some of the lingo that's used out there today? Maybe this is for Mike.
Okay. Some of the advantages that a business has with cloud computing is that you don't necessarily have to make that capital investment, you know, to bring that server infrastructure on site, and you don't have to have the expertise on your staff to take care of that server. You don't have to have a place to put the server. It's temperature controlled and power controlled. And that is something that you see from a premise standpoint on your business. It also gives you the ability to connect to your computing resources from any place you need to, you know, as long as the security that you have set up allows you to do that. And so those are some advantages I see. The cloud, you know, it's becoming kind of a commodity market, and the term is used a lot nowadays. And I'm going to talk about 3 types of cloud services that we offer at Nex-Tech, just to put some perspective to this. The first one is called infrastructure as a service. And so, you know, on the Nex-Tech hybrid cloud, we can offer, I would call it commodity type units. If you want this amount of storage, this number of CPUs, and this amount of memory on a server, we can provide that to you. If you want to use that as a hot backup, or however you want to use it as a company, we have that ability. We're just providing raw infrastructure, commodity processing, memory, and storage with network connectivity. And by the way, when you look at cloud services, you really need to look at the network connectivity, because a lot of the major providers charge you I/O charges, and those can really add up. They're a usage-based type fee. In the Nex-Tech cloud offerings, we do not charge the I/O as a usage-based type fee, because we have the network that it's attached to. So that's infrastructure as a service. The next is platform as a service. And that's where we can provide a server that's pre-built with a specific operating system, database. It's just a server that's ready to run whatever applications that you want to load on it that are specific to your business. And we have a few customers that we're providing the platform as a service offering to as well. And then the most common cloud service that we see nowadays is the software as a service. And some examples of software as a service would be, you know, the Microsoft, used to be Office 365, now they just call it Microsoft 365. That includes, you know, getting your documents stored on the cloud, combined with the applications of Word, Excel, Teams, PowerPoint. All those applications are served from the cloud. Your storage is on the cloud, and the cloud helps manage that communication you have over the video conferencing. You know, we've been offering cloud-based software as a service for years. We know with our hosted emails, probably one of the first ones that we offered that was a cloud software as a service. So those are the 3 types of cloud services that we offer through our hybrid cloud or through separate vendors on the public cloud.
Yeah, I guess one of the big things about it is identifying which cloud's right for you and what goes in the cloud and what cloud does it move to.
We can help you determine that too, right? We have engineers. I have a question, and I might take this offline. Lisa is saying, wish the cost of cloud phone systems was lower, especially if you have 5 employees, but have to have phones in every room, having to pay for 11 phones. So I'll just make a note that the app is free, and I'll get with Linda after this conference, and we'll address that maybe offline. Okay.
Sounds good, Brian. We're operations guys, so we don't get pricey.
Yeah.
If we do, there's no guarantee. It'll probably be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. One of the questions, I'm out in the field a lot, and they have hit our Nex-Tech website, and there's something on the website called Kalia. I can only say the word. I do not understand the word. So maybe tell us a little bit about Kalia. Who is she?
So I know one more thing than Brian then, because I know what it stands for.
Okay.
So it stands for Communication Assistance of Law Enforcement Act.
Okay.
So actually, the group that I currently supervise, the Network Operations Group, is responsible for pre-sales, sales, implementation, designing, from start to finish of our Kalia offering. And what Kalia really means, it's pretty cool. I'm a fairly technical person, I'd like to think. But it's not quite as cool as the wiretaps that you see in movies and on the, data hijacking going on in the different movies. It's not quite that cool, but it's still pretty cool. We're a trusted third party is what it is, so that instead of a company like Nex-Tech doing their own Kalia validation, verification, authorization, we do that for hundreds of companies, and we do it primarily for data services. And to bore you with a couple of different things, there's 2 different types of Kalia services. Voice Kalia, which has been enacted decades ago. The voice or the data portion of it was enacted in 2006, the most recent. So you can do a voice intercept or a data intercept. And what does that mean? There's 2 different warrant types that can be sent in. One of the warrants can only authorize it's basically glorified caller ID. It's the caller ID information. We get it into our data center, into a mediation server that pre-processes it and formats it into an acceptable format that the law enforcement will accept. And in a real-time fashion, we will dump that information directly to, it could be, there's lots of, they all start with 3 letters or have 3-letter acronyms, which is interesting, but we have VPNs knocked up to several of these 3-letter acronyms that look like, end in .gov. The second level of that would be, they may need to do the first level of intercept, Kalia intercept, for the voice to be able to say, yes, this person is speaking with that Brian Mater individual. Now we need to know what they say. So they have to go back and get the warrant escalated to be able to include the call content, which is the call recording. So at that case, in a lot of these we can provision within, on a good day, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. On a bad day, 5 minutes. A bad day being somebody's in bad trouble. So it takes us on some of these 5 to 30 minutes to provision them. Then pretty soon there's somebody listening to, Brian Mater's conversation in some place in the United States. Put that into perspective of what they did in 2006 was data Kalia intercepts. There's the same thing, but you have to think of the caller identification information to be the IP header. So it knows that this person with this IP went to this other IP with this port to that port, right? And that's all they know is the to and the fro. You can also get the data, the full data capture of what that individual is doing. It'll probably be encrypted fairly well. Whether the government has the keys or not, I don't know. But we can send them the full data stream real time. Again, we mediate it in our data centers and send it directly over to the LEA. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of cool, but you got to really watch yourself because it's, federal judges usually in Washington, D.C. that are signing off on this, or somewhere in Virginia, somewhere on the East Coast there. We do, at least one a month, sometimes once a week. So it's an active thing going on. I mean, everybody kind of got in trouble. If everybody knows what FISA was back in the day, there was a lot of, hoopla about that and inappropriate usage of that. So that kind of came into play with CALIA as well. So,
and we service throughout the United States and even some of the outlying islands, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's how many states it is in the United States, but it's 30 or 40 or 45 of them, and then a couple of the, outlying U.S. territories, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we don't really serve outside the U.S. We've had a couple of inquiries from potential clients and law enforcement agencies about doing that, and the laws get pretty sticky, when you get in the middle of that. You don't want to put a person in danger, sending them to another country to do an intercept.
Right.
But it's part of our carrier services that we offer, and that's where an area we see growth in the company. And a lot of people that have been long-time Nex-Tech customers think of Nex-Tech as they're my telecommunications provider for phone and internet, cable, or my business technology provider. And this is a new area, relatively new in our company that we see some growth in, and we have small telecommunications companies, as Brian and Allan mentioned earlier, all over the U.S., not just for CALIA services, but other carrier services that we offer as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it was, I'd say, pretty kind of a homegrown thing that we did there. I mean, we did acquire a small base, very small base of local, in Kansas for the most part. But we totally redid the entire platform that was being used. We didn't bring over the platform that they were using for it. We didn't bring over really anything that they were doing. And we grew it in the last 4 years from being, tens to hundreds of clients and being on the first name basis with some of the, federal agencies. And it's kind of funny because couple of the guys were in, I think it was in North Carolina where they're having one of the conferences for Metaswitch, I believe it was. And one of the DEA agents walked by and seen Nex-Tech on their shirt. And they're like, hey, I know you. No, I don't think you know me. They're like, I know your company. Like, yeah. And then they'll say, do you know, I won't give out the other people's name that work in the group, but they'll mention out some of the people that work in the group I supervise. Like, yeah, I know them. That's kind of cool.
Okay. We're about 10, 15 minutes away from the end of our session. Again, encouraging people to ask questions. You can even try to stump them a little bit if you'd like.
And I'm just beginning to like you too.
But I have a question about our Network Operations Center. I've lost track of some of the numbers. I'm a numbers guy, and so Mike, can you kind of tell me what's going on with the Network Operations Center and some of the things we do and the quantity we do and obviously the quality?
Well, our Network Operations Center, also called NOC internally, is a work group that monitors networks, and they monitor networks for anywhere from a small telecommunications company or a small data company that wants us to monitor their servers up to a statewide network. We monitor 6 statewide networks. And what does that mean? That means that 24/7 by 365, we have individuals watching the network, and those networks have devices on them, and those devices trigger alarms when something goes wrong. It could be that the device goes down, or it could be that the device is having an issue, but it's not down yet, and it's triggering an alarm that, hey, something's about to happen here, so I need some attention. And so in the NOC today, we capture 3 to 4 million of these alarms a month, and we run them through a system that has some intelligence behind it that says, okay, for this customer, here's the alarm. What is the severity of this alarm? is it critical? If you're a data center and the air conditioner quit working, that's a critical alarm. Probably within 30 minutes, you need to get somebody in there and get that air conditioner cooled down or start shutting down equipment. So that's an example of critical. A severe alarm could be something that has a subset of customers that are down, but not a major network outage. Or it could just be a minor alarm where, hey, something's going on here. It's not down yet, but you might want to take note of it and let the technician know tomorrow morning to check into it. So that's what the NOC does. They process those alarms, and it's kind of interesting because this NOC that we started, probably about 10 years ago, we had built a relationship with a vendor by the name of Cordell in California, and it ended up becoming a partnership, and then it ended up becoming an acquisition. And so last year, Nex-Tech acquired Cordell, and Cordell is in the business of providing devices that monitor networks. And so they have alarm capturing devices, an alarm processing type devices, and we've been using those devices for years in our NOC. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to have an ownership interest in this company because it works so well with our NOC today that we're providing to these other companies, and allows us to team together, which we have been, to try to improve our NOC service and also improve the traditional Cordell network monitoring services that they provide. So in a nutshell, that's what our NOC does, and we're very proud of it. We have a great NOC here. They really do a good job, and they didn't miss a beat during COVID either.
If it is a leap year, they do work that one extra day. They'll put in 366 that year. And then one thing, along with the Cordell acquisition came along some of the switch traffic engineering aspect that came with Cordell. That's something that we personally hadn't used yet, but do now to do our switch traffic engineering and reporting for quantity of calls and types of calls off of our Metaswitch. And they'll do it for various other switches as well.
Jim asks about how difficult is it for Nex-Tech to comply with HIPAA and or KCJIS requirements for municipalities who might be considering utilizing software as a service or cloud networking?
Well, security compliance is an ongoing process, and we take it very seriously here at Nex-Tech. We have our technicians that we run through HIPAA training when they start new, and we also have our technicians that we send through the CGIS training internally. And then they sign the CGIS document that they understand. So when the customer needs a copy of that, the law enforcement agency, then we already have that pre-signed because our technicians have already been trained in that particular security discipline, I guess is the way, or methodology. The same way with the HIPAA. We will provide a business associates agreement to our customer that will spell out what we do to protect any of the personal data that we have related to those customers' clients themselves. And we will work with our vendors in some cases to get BAAs from them. We have a very intense vendor scrutinization process to make sure that our vendors are compliant. And we also have a SOC audit that we do for our data center. And we also do some self-compliance on NIST framework and the PCI credit card compliance. So, we have lots of different security methodologies that we work through here at Nex-Tech. And cybersecurity is very important to us, and we know it's important to our customers as well.
Okay. You would say that it's probably not real difficult. It's just a lot of time consuming, a lot of different pieces and parts, and a lot of work related to it to keep it secure, right?
Yeah, that's the challenge. It takes a lot of scrutiny to look at every little process that you go through and the system you support to make sure that it complies, that it checks off the box.
Okay.
Not always pretty convenient either. I mean, it adds some complexity to doing things. I mean, there's areas within our network that I won't go or won't go unless necessarily have to, just because of it is, there's security concerns with that.
Right.
And I mean, they do take it seriously. We meet monthly right now for about 2 hours every month with a group of 8 to 9 people to just go over security, cybersecurity, and discuss it and execute on various different topics.
We have about 6 minutes. I have really 2 questions. We call these kind of a wrap-up question. There's a person on the chat named Steve. He would like to know what your first piece of networking equipment was that you installed, Allan.
Well, if it's a Nex-Tech, it's probably still working and operational because we can always find a place to put that. I would have to say that it was probably LatticeNet. And it was either at Falcon Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, which is a highly secured facility, or at a place that is almost laughable now in a sense. It was called, I don't think it doesn't. The building is listed. It's called Information Handling Services. It was called IHS. They kept all the mil specs for everything. And we put in LatticeNet there to start networking together. And I remember walking in there, and I forget what the banner had, is that they had, today it's not even the size of a hard drive, under storage, and that was their banner. They were so proud of this. And they had every mil spec. If you needed the mil spec for something, you got it from IHS out there in Denver. But probably a LatticeNet hub.
Okay. And we have about... Go ahead. Yeah. We have about 5 minutes. I'd like for each of you to take 2 minutes and tell us about your vision for the future as it relates to technology. It can be any topic, just like what do you, if you're looking at a crystal ball, what would you possibly see in there? Mike, would you like to go first?
Sure. We are seeing things happen today that are going to continue to evolve into the future. Some things like voice recognition. We all have either Google Home or Amazon devices in our house, and video surveillance, and putting some intelligence behind that with facial recognition. Artificial intelligence is something that's going to happen. And so when you take things like video recognition and voice recognition and you put some artificial intelligence behind them, then you really have some applications that can be very interesting in the future. Some good ones and not so good ones either. There's some dangerous applications that can happen with that. And so those are evolving as we speak today. I think the voice recognition has really come a long ways, but it still needs some work. Just this morning when I was getting ready, I asked Amazon, I said, Alexa, what's the temperature outside? And I can predict exactly what she's going to say. She's going to start off with right now. Every time I ask that question, it always starts off with right now. It's 71 degrees. And so I asked my wife, I said, why didn't she just say something like, hey, Mike, it's 71, or it's currently 71? But she's pre-programmed to specifically say that sentence.
Yeah.
In the future, I would say with some artificial intelligence behind that, she'll be able to recognize my voice inflections better, and maybe not be so predictable in her responses. Like humans aren't always predictable in their responses, but as a machine, Alexa is. And the voice recognition is one piece of it. The video recognition. It's going to be a situation where, I was talking about our access control system to our building and how in the future I'd like to be able to see it integrate with the cameras. So as I'm walking into the building from the parking lot, the door automatically unlocks because it recognizes who I am. That would be a neat feature in the future. Same way in my house, if it could do that. The other areas that interest me personally are self-driving cars. That's probably one of the more exciting things that I see, because I'm aging, and at some point in time I'm not going to be able to drive. And with the self-driving cars, it will be very handy just to get in and say, take me to my son's house or take me to my granddaughter's house, and not have to worry about it, and not have to worry about my license, is it going to get renewed, or is my eyesight going to be good enough to drive in the next few years? And we're on the verge, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years to see some real improvements in that area. And another area that I'm kind of excited about too, and I'm not really much of a gamer, but one of the things that I played years ago quite a bit was Microsoft Flight Simulator. And the cool thing about the new version of Flight Simulator they're working on in 2020 is I would call it uses immersive virtual reality, where you pick the plane, you pick off where do you want to take off, any place in the U.S. So I could take off in the system from the Hayes Airport. I can fly over my house. It will have the most recent satellite image with my vehicle, if I was home at the time when that took, in the driveway. And I can even in the system say, what's the current weather conditions in Hayes? If it's raining, it'll be raining in the plane that I'm operating in Flight Simulator. And so that technology really excites me, and I see all kinds of other opportunities for that in the future. So, you take a look at augmented reality, virtualization, artificial intelligence, voice recognition, the video, self-driving cars, you put all that together and it creates a whole new world of possibilities for us.
And I hate to cut you off, Allan, we're going to have to reserve this another time. We need to.
I had some great stuff too, Brian. Gaming, cybersecurity.
The gift card goes to the first person that logged into our website, which was to our webinar, which is Jeremy B. This is the last session of the day. Thank you so much for attending Tech Edge. We hope that you enjoyed all the information, and we have a short survey that will be at the end, and we encourage you to fill that out. Thank you to my expert panelists and for all the questions that came in. I've had a wonderful, enjoyable time this morning, and with that, we wish you a great rest of the day.
Thank you.